If you close your eyes and picture an ancient human discovering a new continent, your brain probably serves up a dramatic Hollywood movie trailer. You imagine a rugged, muscular visionary standing on a cliff edge, pointing a wooden spear toward the horizon, telling his tribe that destiny awaits them across the treacherous ocean. You imagine a grand, heroic expedition planned over months, fueled by an insatiable human desire to explore the great unknown. Erase that image completely. It is entirely wrong. The ancient humans who populated every landmass on this spinning rock except Antarctica did not give a single microscopic thought to exploration, destiny, or expanding the frontiers of human knowledge. They were not brave pioneers. They were just aggressively hungry, intensely observant people who were trying to find out where the next meal was coming from. The entire global conquest of the human species, spanning tens of thousands of miles of brutal, unforgiving terrain, was essentially the greatest biological accident in planetary history. It was a slow, agonizingly lazy phenomenon known as generational drift. Imagine you live in a small hunter-gatherer group. You do not wake up and say, "Let's walk from Africa to Australia today," instead. You wake up and realize the local mammoth population is getting suspiciously thin. This brings us to a fascinating piece of the puzzle known as the Overkill Hypothesis. Ancient humans were catastrophic for local ecosystems. We were so good at hunting massive, slow-moving Ice Age animals, the megafauna, that we literally ate our way through our local buffets. When the giant sloths and mammoths in a 20-mile radius ran out, your tribe just moved 3 miles down the valley to where the food was still roaming. Your kids grew up in that new valley, ate everything there, and then moved 3 miles into the next valley. Compound that tiny 3-mile grocery run over hundreds of generations, and suddenly, a lineage that started in the savannas of East Africa is building snow shelters in the Arctic. But to pull off this multi-generational global sprawl, ancient humans needed a physical cheat code. If you look at a human being objectively compared to the rest of the animal kingdom, our stat sheet is pathetic. Our eyesight is so mediocre a house cat would pity us. We have no armor. Our claws are fragile fingernails made of the same stuff as hair, and a reasonably motivated wild boar could outrun us in a dead sprint. However, we possess one physical superpower so grotesque and effective that it breaks the balance of nature. We leak water through our skin. We sweat.
Ow.
Most predators have to pant to cool down, meaning they can only sprint in short, explosive bursts before their internal engine literally overheats and shuts down. The human body completely hairless and covered in millions of sweat glands, paired with an upright bipedal gait that acts like a highly efficient pendulum, operates on a completely different operating system. We cannot outrun a gazelle, but we can jog after it under the blistering midday sun for 5 straight hours until the gazelle collapses from heat stroke. Covering 15 to 20 miles a day on foot wasn't an Olympic athletic achievement for our ancestors. It was just a Tuesday. Their bodies were conditioned from childhood to be the ultimate all-terrain biological rovers. But having the legs to walk across the earth doesn't explain how they crossed oceans. This brings us to the greatest map glitch our species ever exploited. When we look at a modern globe, we see massive blue oceans separating continents. Ancient humans didn't see that, because the Earth's climate was experiencing a massive server crash known as the last glacial period. Enormous quantities of the planet's water were locked up in miles-thick continental ice sheets, because all that water was trapped on land as ice. Global sea levels plummeted by hundreds of feet. This turned the geography of the Earth into a temporary playground. The Bering Land Bridge, or Berenja, was not some narrow, treacherous, icy tightrope connecting Siberia to Alaska. It was a massive, grassy landmass twice the size of Texas. Ancient Asian populations literally walked into the Americas without ever needing to invent a boat, without ever getting their ankles wet, simply by following herds of migrating animals across what was, at the time, just regular, boring dirt. They didn't perform a miraculous ocean crossing. They took advantage of a temporary geographic shortcut that the climate handed them. Walking across a stretch of ocean that simply forgot to be an ocean for a few millennia, similar drops in sea level narrowed the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, allowing populations to easily cross from the Horn of Africa into the Arabian Peninsula. Ancient human expansion wasn't just a story of sheer willpower. It was a story of opportunistic scavengers walking through doors that nature accidentally left wide open. Doors that have long since slammed shut under hundreds of feet of modern seawater. But walking has a hard physical limit. You can only carry so many mammoth steaks and animal skin tents on your own back before your knees give out to truly shrink the globe. Humans had to stop relying on their own muscles and start hijacking the biological technology of other species. Enter the pack animals. The moment humans figured out how to domesticate horses, donkeys, and llamas, the speed and carrying capacity of our species multiplied overnight. But the crown jewel of ancient transportation hacking was the camel. The camel is basically a biological 18-wheeler truck specifically engineered by nature to survive absolute hell. They can tolerate internal body temperatures that would cook a human brain, and they can lose a massive percentage of their body's water weight without going into organ failure. By designing specialized saddles to balance cargo on these bizarre, grumpy desert tanks, ancient humans unlocked regions of the Sahara, the Arabian Peninsula, and Central Asia that were previously massive death zones. This wasn't just about moving to a new home. This kicked off the era of ancient long-distance trade. Archaeological digs constantly uncover specific types of shells or rare stones resting thousands of miles away from their geological point of origin. Long before the invention of the combustion engine or paved roads, human beings had established a tangled, interdependent global supply chain, moving luxury goods across hostile deserts on the backs of abducted desert mammals. When they weren't using animals, they were using the Earth's natural interstate highway system, rivers. The Nile, the Tigris, the Indus. These weren't just places to get a drink. Once humans strapped some logs together or hollowed out a giant tree trunk, these river systems allowed massive amounts of cargo and people to glide effortlessly across regions that would have taken months to cross on foot through dense jungles or jagged mountains. Everything we have talked about so far is a story of slow drift, climate loopholes, and lazy opportunism. But there is a glaring, massive exception to this rule. A chapter of ancient history that required a level of intentional, terrifying genius that modern science still struggles to fully comprehend. Let's talk about the Pacific Islands in Australia. Even during the most extreme ice ages, when sea levels were at their absolute lowest, the journey from Southeast Asia to Australia required crossing miles of deep, open, terrifying ocean. Yet humans somehow made it to Australia at least 65,000 years ago, long before recorded history, long before the pyramids. Someone looked at an endless expanse of dark water and decided to build a watercraft to see what was on the other side. But the undisputed masters of the watery void were the Polynesians. While early humans were accidentally wandering into the Americas, Polynesian voyagers were executing highly deliberate, meticulously planned colonization missions across thousands of miles of the Pacific Ocean. They didn't just drift on logs hoping for the best. They built massive double-hulled outrigger canoes capable of carrying dozens of people, breeding stocks of pigs and chickens, and agricultural seeds. They packed their boats knowing exactly what it would take to build a civilization from scratch on a rock they had never seen before. And their navigation system was nothing short of a biological quantum computer. With absolutely no written maps, no compasses, and no satellite GPS, Polynesian navigators could find microscopic dots of land in the largest ocean on Earth. By turning their brains into incredibly sensitive environmental hard drives, they memorized the exact rising and setting points of hundreds of specific stars. They learned to read the reflection of green lagoons in the undersides of clouds. They memorized the specific flight paths of seabirds that would only fly a certain distance from land before returning at dusk. Most incredibly, they could physically feel the ocean. A skilled navigator could sit in the hull of a canoe and feel the subtle, microscopic interference patterns in the ocean swells. A specific bounce in the waves caused by an island hundreds of miles away that was disrupting the ocean's rhythm. How does a species without writing maintain and pass down this mind-bending volume of complex astronomical and environmental data? This is where the grandmother hypothesis steps in. In the brutal world of ancient survival, once you passed your reproductive prime, you were theoretically a drain on resources, and human elders, specifically grandmothers, became the ultimate evolutionary advantage. They were the hard drives. While the young hunters exhausted themselves physically, the elders held the maps. They remembered which plants cured infections, They remembered where the hidden water sources were during a drought 50 years ago, and they held the oral traditions that contained the intricate star charts of the ocean navigators. Without these walking libraries passing data across generations, every single journey into the unknown would have been a suicide mission. And let's be absolutely clear. Many of them were suicide missions. We look at the map of human migration and marvel at the success. But the Earth is a massive graveyard of failed attempts. For every tribe that successfully crossed a freezing mountain range or navigated to a tropical island, there were countless others who misjudged the weather, ran out of water in their dried gourd containers, encountered a hostile disease, or simply starved to death in the dark. The fact that you are sitting here today is a statistical miracle. You can prove this by looking at modern genetics. By tracking mutation rates in human DNA across the globe, geneticists have mapped out the precise routes and agonizingly slow timelines of our ancestors' march across the continents. Your DNA is the ultimate, undeniable receipt. It is a roadmap written in your cells, proving that you are the direct descendant of the most paranoid, the most observant, and the most stubbornly adaptable creatures to ever walk the earth. They didn't conquer the planet with a grand vision. They conquered it by observing the shape of the clouds, by stealing the endurance of camels and dogs, by waiting for ice ages to drain the oceans, and by putting one foot in front of the other, generation after generation, just to survive the winter. So, the next time you feel completely exhausted from just walking to your kitchen to check the fridge for the 4th time today, cut yourself some slack. Your ancestors spent 70,000 years walking across deserts, surviving ice ages, and navigating oceans by the stars, all so you could have the luxury of standing still. You've done enough walking.